Pomp and circumstance as two leaders meet across the Cold War's last frontier. Can the summit of Korean leaders lead to a peace agreement, or is it just a hollow performance? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Sami Zaidan. It's the second only such meeting in more than 50 years. The leaders of North and South Korea, their nations split by the world's most heavily armed border. In a carefully staged but hugely symbolic move, the South's President Moo-Hyun stepped across the military divide, claiming it heralded the start of a process towards peace and reunification. The ensuing ceremony in the northern capital Pyongyang preceded talks with his counterpart Kim Jong-il. The country's once a thriving friend of the West, the other a shunned and impoverished nation, have remained technically at war since the end of the Korean War in 1953. While the Korean peninsula borders China, rests on the eastern tip of Russia and lies just 200 kilometers from Japan. The border itself rests roughly along the imaginary 38th parallel. It's the last remaining dividing line drawn up between communism and capitalism in the Cold War. Well, the Korean peninsula became the first battleground for Cold War fighting in 1950. Over 3 years, communist Chinese troops supported the North Korean forces and the US stood with the South. The war ended in 1953 with a truce, not a treaty, leaving the Korean peninsula split right through the middle. Today, estimates suggest that over 1.5 million troops face each other over the border's demilitarized zone. Well, joining us to discuss the Korean summit today are our guests in London, James Horn, expert on Korean affairs and the first British chargé d'affaires in North Korea. In Washington, D.C., Scott Snyder, a senior associate at the Asia Foundation. And on the line from Seoul in South Korea, Ji-Hyun Kim, a reporter for the Korea Herald. Thank you all for joining us. If I could start with James, first of all. Do you think this summit can lead to a peace agreement between the two Koreas?
I think that's a long way down the road. I think what you're seeing is part of a process that has been going on for nearly 10 years now. I don't think that process is anywhere near its end, if the end is a peace treaty and unification. But I think this summit may be a contributing factor.
All right, maybe a contributing factor. Let's go over and get the view from Washington. For so long, the leader of North Korea simply held out. Why did he agree to the summit now?
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons why Kim Jong-il may feel that this is a good time for a summit. I think the main reason is that he needs to continue to gain the benefit of the economic relationship that has developed between South and North Korea. In addition, he knows that there is an election coming up in South Korea soon, and he may be worried that there could be a change in South Korea's policy direction that would have an impact on the flow of economic benefits from South Korea to the north.
All right.
And then also, as we can see from the ceremony, I think that Kim Jong-il gains domestic political benefits from hosting a South Korean leader.
All right, interesting point there on the upcoming presidential elections in December. Let's go over to Ji-Hyun Kim from the Korea Herald. Will this be enough to boost the standing of the South Korean president, be enough perhaps to take some of the oomph out of the Conservative Party's campaign for presidency?
Well, at the moment, on the domestic scene, the Liberals are at the moment feuding, so that is not contributing to this. And also, I think many of the people in South Korea are still skeptical about the summit affecting the December election in a favorable way for President Moo-Hyun and his politicians on his side, because currently surveys show that many of the public believe that they are not being swayed by the summit, although it may be a meaningful affair for the two countries. So regarding the political impact, I don't think that there is a very large chance of it being favorable for President Moo-Hyun or his followers.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about what's at stake here. What would a Conservative president mean for South-North ties?
For South-North?
Yes, I mean, if the
Conservatives...
Conservatives...
the connection is a little bit bad.
I'm sorry, I was asking you whether if the Conservatives were successful in the upcoming December elections. What would that mean for relations between the two Koreas?
Well, for the two Koreas, it seems as though for the two Koreas, if the Conservative Party would come into power in the December election, first of all, there is a chance that relations might deteriorate because we do know that the Conservative Party has a much more hardline stance regarding North Korea, which is in contrast to President Moo-Hyun's much softer line. So that is something at stake. However, we have seen a change of attitude in the Conservatives as well, and many of them, including Lee Myung-bak, who is the front runner for the Grand National Party, and he has been saying that perhaps we do need a change of line toward North Korea in order to pursue better relations.
All right, let's go back to London. James, maybe the North does have a vested interest in making sure the Conservatives don't come to power here. But is the North Korean leader in a position, and is he willing to give anything that might be of use to President No as he comes out of this summit?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer. I think the problem is that Kim Jong-il will want to make sure that whatever he gives to No doesn't alienate the Conservative Party and the possible next president. But I think there's a mistake here that it's going to be very difficult for the South Korean Conservatives to turn the clock back. 10 years is a long time. A lot has been done. They may make noises and they may want to modify things at the edges, but I think that they're going to find themselves, as they've started to admit, pretty much committed to carrying on some form of engagement. After all, they had a long run at a harder and a tougher policy, and it didn't get anywhere, whereas the last 10 years have seen a change. Kim Jong-il may want to try and show to the Conservatives that lines are still open, and I think there's the makings of a deal between the two sides there.
All right, Scott Snyder, what does this say in the timing of this summit say about the pressure that North Korea is coming under?
Well, I think that the timing of the summit does suggest that Kim Jong-il recognizes that he has serious economic needs that have to be met. And I think that's really one of the driving factors in terms of the timing of the summit. If there's a new administration in Korea, it will take time for that administration to settle in, and also the North Korean leader does not know what the direction of the new administration's policy would be. So this really turns out to be the best moment for Kim Jong-il to try to lock in some form of continued economic flows from South Korea to the north.
And that's what I was about to ask you. We can expect then that certainly there would be some discussion of economic aid. Is South Korea's president in a position to give that at this point in time, given some of the domestic criticism at home that he's been perhaps too soft with the North?
Well, I think that there may be some opportunities to expand economic assistance in a limited fashion, but part of it will also depend on what North Korea is willing to give in terms of access. There are a number of sectors that the South Korean business community is interested in, but also in terms of tension reduction measures, because that's really the substantive area where relatively little progress has been made that would be significant and substantive in terms of actually achieving some kind of result from this meeting.
All right, let's go back to South Korea and once over to Ji-Hyun Kim. Expectations amongst the South Korean people, what do they expect to get out of this summit? Is it tension reduction measures, as Scott was explaining there, or perhaps family reunification meetings, a little boost for those initiatives?
Well, of course, family reunions and other issues regarding their families and personal matters is, of course, important. And I'm sure many of the South Koreans are hoping that the summit will maybe bring some results in that area. However, I think we do need to note that in the beginning, even before the summit started, President Moo-Hyun has already stated that he does not believe that he would be able to reap too many results from the summit. And he even asked the public to forgive him if he does not bring back too many results. also, going back a bit, I think this shows that perhaps what we expect from this summit is not that important, but I think what's more important is that this is probably a very symbolic kind of event. And having said that, I think Mr. Horn did mention that the 10 years, it would be a hard time to turn back. However, I do believe that in some aspects, I mean, in the 10 years, we've seen North Korea conduct its first nuclear test. So perhaps that shows maybe just simply going for a soft line would not be the best kind of attitude for us to take right now. So I think some of that sentiment is what the South Koreans have right now, and that is probably reflected in their expectations for the summit as well. So I guess we're hopeful and at the same time doubtful at the same time.
Right. Perhaps let's just take a step back, Ji-Hyun. Why is it so difficult for people to visit each other? We know there are thousands of families who've been split up on either side of the 38th parallel. Talk a little bit about things like sending mail, lack of rail links, telephone links. Why is it so difficult? Why are those basic things not in place?
Well, mostly because it's being censored, and that is, I would have to say, due to North Korea. As you know, most of the South Koreans here are, of course, eager to correspond and exchange with North Korea. But as you know, for example, in the latest, at the summit, but there were inter-Korean talks before on general levels, and after that, South Korea stopped its rice aid, and that was due to the nuclear test. And after that, North Korea refused to allow family reunions for the time being. And as you see, these are the stumbling blocks, and there are still more, and of course a lot of technologies involved which are blocking the two countries and their families from interacting.
All right, well, leaders of the two Koreas may be talking, but is peace on the peninsula entirely up to them? When we come back, we ask whether the US and China are on board efforts to bridge the Korean divide. Stay with us.